It's all, good and well to talk about this, but if we don't have a solution for the future homeowner, the first-time homebuyer, the youth of Canada, they're going to leave. And if there's no youth to buy the property, you can kiss your $3-4 million property prices goodbye.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back to the Tom Storey Show. I appreciate you all being here on this Sunday morning. And if you're looking for a Saturday podcast, well, you're in luck because we've got two guests today. Dan Wurtele is joining us again on the show. One of our biggest episodes ever. That was like a very tariff-focused episode. Hopefully we won't talk about too much of that today. And Ryan Dash is joining us for the first time from the Vancouver Life team and the Living in Vancouver podcast. Boys, welcome back. How are you doing? And tell me everything. What's going on?
Thanks so much for having us. Really glad to be here, gentlemen. And it's excited to get into it. Lots of moving things in the real estate world, of course. And glad to have Ryan on this time. Welcome.
Yeah. So Ryan, for our viewers that aren't familiar with your guys' show, can you give us a bit of a background of what you guys have been up to? Because you've been doing it, I think, longer than us.
Yeah, Dan and I started the podcast about 5 years ago now. And every Saturday morning, we're giving our guys, our audience updates as what's happening both here in Vancouver, but also across the nation, which is why we like to come on your show, Tom. And, it's been an incredible journey. Started in the depths of COVID, just trying to reach people. And we weren't allowed in their houses anymore. So this was the next best way. And it really has transformed our business, and we've got to meet cool people like yourselves.
Well, we're excited because most people think Steve is a Vancouver realtor, but he's not. He's in the burbs. He doesn't really know what's going on. So it's nice to have some real Vancouver people on the show today. I mean, let's just get started with fall market. You guys can kind of fill me in on what you guys are seeing. Maybe we'll kind of go around here and just give an update on what we expect, trends that we're watching for. At least here in the city of Toronto, we had a very, very sluggish start. We had, some glimmer of hope in the summer months where the transactions were actually going up, but the prices were still continuing to fall. And now we're in what is supposed to be one of the busiest months of the year in any real estate year. So Dan, maybe we'll start with you. What are you expecting to see in September? Maybe we'll go across different property types, just transaction volume. Do we feel like we could look back at the summer now and go like, oh, that was the first moment of bottoming out? Or is it way too soon to look at that? And we just got to see how things kind of play out here now.
Yeah, the Vancouver market, it's kind of just grinding across what feels like a sales cycle bottom. If you know what I mean, like sales numbers, they're not lowering. They're actually kind of grinding upwards, but just, off of basically record lows.
Yeah.
So it's not slowing, but the increases are minimal, but they're there. Do you know what I mean? I think we just had, interestingly enough, July over June was the first time we saw more sales in July than June in recorded history. So that was an unusual bump. And of course, everything since COVID has kind of been unusual. And here we are, 5 years in and still hitting these unique metrics. So going into fall market, which, as you kind of alluded to, is typically, sure, we would historically see a sales bump. And it's so unknown still. Typically we try our best to forecast 3 months out. And now it's even harder 3 weeks. But in all honesty, there's just no economic drivers here that point to any kind of a spike. I'll call it. Like, sure, there'll be a lift, but again, it's just gonna be nominal, I think, right? Like we definitely didn't see a spring market here, and honestly, I don't see any reasons, sort of boots on the ground sense that we're gonna see any notable lift.
The thing that we saw in Toronto was that the sales volume only really started going up because prices continued to drop. And there seemed to be that value alignment between buyer and seller. And I've said this a few times on the show recently, but it sounds simple when you say it out loud, but sales can only happen when buyers and sellers are agreeing on price. So before we jump over to Ryan, Dan, are you seeing with your active listings, with your buyer clients, is there more of that finding that middle ground on value and the agreement happening? Are you seeing that on the ground level?
Sort of. And, here the last couple months of stats, again, we're seeing this slight increase in sales volumes while prices are going down. So if that trend is kind of accentuating, right, then, we don't know where the bottom is, but sure. Yeah. After, I think, what is it? A solid couple of years now of sellers realizing the 2021 prices are now actually long gone and probably won't come back. It does settle into a bit of reality. We also definitely see in our market, there is so much equity within homes. There's so much wealth here that the amount of times we've put out offers that are what I would consider reasonable market value, and the sellers are just still, dug in and saying no, it's a high proportion. So yes, some buyer seller matches are obviously happening, right? A couple thousand deals are made every single month, but at the end of the day, it's still a battle here, it feels like.
And Ryan, on the inventory side, are you expecting, because what we saw, and again, I'm just going to give you my example, and then I'm sure our markets are fairly similar, but we saw a ton of terminations in the summer in the city of Toronto. People just saying like, I want to enjoy the rest of summer. I'm going to take my property off. But the big question is, do they come back? Because their inventory actually dropped a little bit in the summer. Do you think the terminations are coming back to the market, or have people given up on those prices? Or when they come back, will they actually be realistic about where value actually probably is?
I think in order to answer that, you've really got to take a look at what's happening, maybe in a broader economic perspective. I think there's a lot of things that influence a decision to sell a house. Primarily, that would be around things like employment. When we added 83,000 jobs in June, only to have 44,000 slashed in July, it creates a dynamic environment where people, if you're talking about investment as a perspective, like that's in large part dried up. I just, the things aren't penciling like they should or like they did. And so now we're looking at clients who are selling or choosing to sell, likely as a life event, or, maybe it's a job change or a suburb change or a province change or something to that effect. But, we're not seeing a ton of people with excess cash kicking around here looking to pick up an extra property. So I don't think you're going to see that kind of market dynamic. I do think that you're going to see some typical September, October inventory push. You always do. Just people coming back from, being on holiday and things like that, for sure. But do I think we're going to see any kind of meaningful shift? No, I don't. I think we're going to see a lot of what we've currently seen. And I think for the most part in 2025, unless we see the U.S. Fed drop rates kind of a little bit more aggressively than they have, Canada's going to be pretty sluggish.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, we should acknowledge at this point that you guys are wearing the same shirt today, right? We should at least shirt.
You got to, hey, this is how we do it in Vancouver, okay?
Didn't even call each other. That's just how it works. Steve, I don't know what
yelled strong.
Yeah. What are you expecting for the fall market for your area, which is obviously the suburbs? Because one of the big talking points that we've seen across real estate news recently is actually this back to work mandate from not only the government, but the big banks want people to go back. And we saw, whether it's the suburbs or further, or people moving to Alberta or whatever it was, people were able to work remote and they could move to places with lower housing prices because they could work remote. If they're now called back in and they have to come back in, do you think that will bring down prices on these markets people only went to? And I'm not saying that's what's happening.
What are you saying? That's the only reason people live in Surrey?
I mean, why else? But is that a factor we have to now consider? I don't know, Surrey's not far enough away but they're saying that these kind of non-core markets could experience, a pretty significant change now if everyone's forced back to the office 3, 4, 5 days a week. Do you expect that to change?
That's already kind of happened or happening for our market for 6 months or more now. We had a lot of callers in the spring, people that chose to work with us or didn't, that were looking to explore moving back closer to the city because they do, Amazon called everybody back. There was these companies that were just calling everybody back. I know you guys, after your summer markets in Toronto, everybody's all optimistic. Oh, here it comes. It's coming back. It's coming back. I'm not seeing that at all. I think my August was our worst team August for deals on record.
Well, you didn't have to show off, but
I record them. Yeah. Right. It is extremely slow. and I'm encountering more and more sellers. Like I've always felt like through this whole thing, I've encountered sellers that are like, okay, I don't like the price, but I'll move forward. Right now, I'm encountering sellers that are like, no, I'm not taking that. And they think that something's going to happen where they're going to get their price. And I'm like, guys, we got to stop the bleeding before we ever worry about getting the price you want. And so we are seeing that. Like, it's slow. I think it's extremely slow. I'm hoping that the September market starts to come back, and maybe it is. We're going to find out if realtors have all been lying about, oh, well, it's just the weather and people have been on vacation, or if indeed the market's slow. Personally, I think we're in for continued slow market for the trend. But you guys, I mean, from what I hear from my Vancouver friends, they're saying, okay, stuff's starting to pick up, but then maybe it's only picking up because you're coming off of record low months for a number of sales.
Are you guys feeling that? Like when we're looking at what's going to happen, us four collectively do sell a lot of properties every single year, right? Except Steve in August, apparently.
Not this year.
Yeah. But I've always kind of looked at like my business is just a very, very small fraction of the entire market, just like all of us are, but collectively, and the people that we talk to that, you know, hold reasonable market share across the markets that we all work in, we know the buyers we're talking to. We know the sellers we're getting ready for the market right now. Are you feeling just in your own business? And maybe we'll go to Ryan here. Are you finding that you have a lot of sellers that are realistic in coming to the market that have motivation to sell? But I think more than anything, because we all kind of have sellers right now, do you have buyers that want to do things? And who are these buyers? Is it just first-time home buyers? You kind of said investors are kind of gone. So who are the people making decisions right now to show up in these transactions we're seeing in the market?
Well, yeah, I mean, especially in Vancouver, if you're buying a property here, you've likely had some form of intergenerational wealth transfer, just because the sheer price of getting into the market in Vancouver, even on the affordable side, is largely unaffordable. And so, you know, like I said, I really think the people that are coming to the marketplace, I also think it's somewhat price point segmented as well. So if you're beneath $1 million, the likelihood of you selling is probably quite high, or higher anyways, than if you were to look at, say, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. You know, we've had property listed all the way up to just under 7 million this year. And on the top end of that market is very slow. And you're seeing some significant price swings. Right on the bottom end of the marketplace, you're still seeing some price swings, but you know, nowhere near to the effect that you're seeing in the higher end of the market. So I think, you know, if you have, depending on the kind of asset class you have, typically, you know, the more affordable property tends to transact at a higher rate than it does if you're more expensive here. But you know, in terms of intent, I really, like I said before, I really just think this is people who've been in their property for 5 years, have realized a win, who have equity to negotiate with. If you bought in 2021 or 2022, I just don't see that, you know, talking about sellers like Steve, like you just mentioned, saying flat out no. Well, if you bought and you're staring down $150,000 loss or a $200,000 loss, you might just sit in place and wait for a better time. And I don't blame you for that.
When you say under $1 million, is there a house in Vancouver you'd want to move into for under $1 million? Like, does that, I honestly don't know. Like, there's actually lots in Toronto. Does that exist?
Not single family, no.
Okay.
But if you're talking about, you know, condos, or you're talking about townhomes, even townhomes are really hard to find under $1 million now. You know, so you're typically dealing with specifically first-time home buyers that are trying to get into the marketplace right now, who see this as an opportunity. But the seller also has to have realized a win, or have a win to go to after accepting a loss. That's hard to find.
That makes sense. Dan, what about the condo market? Let's get into that. You know, it's been a massive talking point here in the city of Toronto all year that smaller condos are really hurting. We've seen year-over-year drops in condo prices between 5 to 10%, depending on, you know, what specific area you're looking at. Anything going on with Vancouver condos? Are they starting to move again because the price point is lower and the homes are so much more expensive? Like, the gap is just so big. You know, you seeing any traction happening there, or are prices still kind of dipping down?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I did a bit of an analysis on the condo market and of course, attached and detached as well, just to kind of get, or like townhome and detached as well, to get an understanding of it. And like, we like to use, or a lot of agents like to use the peak pricing as kind of a reference, right? And so I was very surprised to find out a couple of things. First, unquestionably, condos sell more in volume than the other two combined. And that makes sense, again, because of price point.
Mhm.
So not only do we see the most liquidity within condos, since peak pricing, they've lowered the least amount.
Hmm.
So when you look at a percentage of price decline since peak, both detached and like your townhome market have come down in price more than condos, which I was completely surprised by. So yes, it's a grinding slow market, and yes, we are seeing losses, across the board, but as like a reference point, sure, yeah, they're actually faring better than the other property types, which is quite amazing.
Even with so much of the demand being investors for those condos versus the end users buying the houses. Because when you say that they've fared better, I would understand just like dollar amount because they started at a lower price, but that just percentage wise, did they also fare better? Like they didn't. And then I guess the next question would be, and I don't know if you did the analysis on this, but you probably have. Did they go up as fast as the houses during the rise as well to have the drop off? I know there's a lot of questions in there, but
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, the percentage is what was analyzed, and yes, they fared better on the downside on a percent basis.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Realty Ninja. Real estate agents, your clients should be proud of your website if you're going to feature their home on it. It's not 2005 and it's time to up your game. You need to have a website that is mobile friendly, that has SEO optimization, that people really want to actually go to and learn more about you. And that's where Realty Ninja comes in. They've built websites for thousands of real estate agents in Canada. We know a ton of people that have listened to the show have created their websites with Realty Ninja and they love it. And the best part, viewers and listeners of the show get 20% off your first year. So go to realtyninja.com/Tom to learn more. That's realtyninja.com/Tom. And oh, guess what? You don't pay until you launch your website. Go check them out because they're awesome. And now back to the podcast.
So that was definitely a surprise. And you're right. Like, we've all touched on it. You guys have done such a great job sharing with your audience that the condo market for investors is just decimated. And that's absolutely the same here. So for, resale condos, it's going to predominantly first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I looked at our book of business and, sure, we're on track to do 100 plus sales this year. But what's happening right now is it's either people who are moving up, predominantly because, in a market that is trending downwards in pricing, moving up, you benefit from that delta and change from that price that you want to move into. And the other half is first-time home buyers. And this emulates what our colleague over at the Bank of Montreal is seeing. He's just like 75% of his pre-apps right now are first-timers. And we're like, why is that? And I think if you're going into a market today as a first-time home buyer, you look at what the interest rate is, you look what you can afford to buy, and that's just what it is. Right? Because you look back in the last 4 or 5 years, all these people who have been buying, selling, owning for, like I said, 5+ years, they've lived through that, 1% interest rate kind of environment. And so we all still kind of have that daydream of that potentially coming back and, sitting on the sidelines and hoping for that. Whereas again, first timers, the second you qualify is when you start to look for homes, right? Them walking into this market, this is the only market they've really known. So I think that's why there's kind of on a percentage basis, so many first timers coming into it. And price point wise, of course, condos are likely to be the entry point, right? So I think that's why we're seeing a bit of liquidity there. Yeah, obviously way more so than the detached market.
I guess because if you look at just based on like the obvious things, it's like, well, why would first time home buyers be getting into the market? One, they didn't buy something, so they don't have a potential loss to deal with, which is a mental thing that even if you can do it, you don't want to. Two, as interest rates have dropped, obviously, okay, that helps with what they can potentially qualify for. But more than anything, the stress test dropped when the interest rates dropped. And I think all those things combined, and then prices have dropped, right? So like you could argue that, yes, it is. I did something recently. I don't know which news thing it was, but it was like that it's the most affordable it's been in a period of time. It's still obviously very much not affordable for a lot of people, but like based on the core things like interest rates are down, stress test is down, and prices are down. So for some first-time home buyers that are renting or living at home, they might look at this and go like, hey, this is actually pretty good, which makes sense with everything you're seeing. Because same thing in our business. Most of my business right now is first-time home buyers or the upsizer, selling to move to something else. And something that we had when we had Taylor Hack on the show that really stuck with me is even if you're taking a loss, and I'm not going to realtor this, I'm not going to give you any spin, but even if you're taking a loss, if you are buying more than you are selling, even if you're doing 2 transactions, you are a buyer in a buyer's market. And I thought that analogy was kind of interesting and very clear when it's said that way. So maybe for some people, that's why you're seeing that in your business, because I'm seeing the exact same thing. Steve, you used to work with a ton of downsizers. Is that still happening for you right now? Are they the ones saying no to these prices, or are you getting the first-time home buyers and upsizers as well?
Well, I mean, I guess recently in the last couple of weeks, we've had more buyers start to come out of the woodwork. So maybe that's just a time of year thing. That's a possibility. For sure, first-time buyers are out there. I'm working with a condo investor right now that's looking, and I saw a price reduction on a property the other day. So they were at I want to say they were at 5.25 for a 2-bed condo, which is pretty cheap for a 2-bed condo in Surrey, and they dropped to $499. And I was like, as soon as I saw that price, I messaging the person. Now, what we're trying to figure out is that now a bait price, and are you going to try and go back up? Because to me, $499 is a deal, and I would even, if they're not interested, I'd look at buying it. Right? But now, is it a bait price? We don't know. But I think, as Ryan kind of mentioned, these are people mostly right now with a need. Right? I'm just trying to think through who I've got. I've got lifestyle change. So I've got people exiting the city at a greater rate than I have people entering the city.
Where are they going?
Oh man, we've got it. So we've got people moving towards town, as you talked about earlier. The leapfrog has now become a thing again. And what I mean by that is in Vancouver, you have the mountains and the border. So you can only basically go east or west. So it used to be before the pandemic, you would have people leave Vancouver, come to Surrey, leave Surrey, go to Langley, leave Surrey, maybe go to Abbotsford, leave Langley, go to Chilliwack. That has come back. In the pandemic, they were all the same price. Like a house in Surrey was 1.8, and you could get an Eastside Vancouver, not nice as a house, but you could get one for 1.8 at one point. And now that's kind of totally switched back. So we're seeing people leapfrogging out further. I will say in the last month, I want to say, I've had an agent from Vancouver Island. I've had an agent from Andrew Stevens from Halifax. And there was another one, another Andrew Russell from Red Deer, all reached out to me and said, hey, what's this house worth in Surrey? And I'm like, this is a weird question. It's because they're all leaving here, right? All the people.
Oh, they're making offers on their properties with a conditional
sale. Yeah. In completely different markets. And they're going out like this. They're going everywhere. And I've never really experienced that before, where people are saying, oh man, people from Surrey are moving here. And it was Halifax, Red Deer, and Vancouver Island, right? And I personally am moving people from Surrey right now to Chilliwack, from Surrey into New Westminster, going the other way. So we're starting to see that leapfrog. Guys, from the Vancouver point of view, are you seeing that right now? Are people coming more to the city, or are they taking their Vancouver lottery real estate money and leaving?
It's very much a demographic question, I think. I think if you're of the baby boomer generation and you've realized a 600 to 1,000% gain on your property, some of those people are selling, but I wouldn't say all of them are either. In Vancouver, you sometimes get intergenerational, people that just take over with family home, right? Mm-hmm. And that house will never hit the market or has never hit the market. You do see that from time to time. I think if, we deal a lot, our city, Vancouver, is very international, right? So we have a lot of people coming here too. But with things like the foreign buyer ban, we typically don't see much in the way of any kind of foreign person without a PR looking at getting invested. I will say I just had a client of mine, Steve, from Dubai, who actually just got his PR. He's retiring and moving to Canada. So, there is that taking place. It's kind of a one-off, I'm going to be honest with you. I think, it's pretty hard for young people here to get a job that actually sustains your style of living in Vancouver. That's the big issue. And so, a lot of people that want to play in Vancouver live in Surrey and they commute every day on light rapid transit, things like that. So, Vancouver has become, in my opinion, it's so very expensive. And like I said, it's intergenerational wealth, it's intergenerational home gifting, it's things like that are allowing families to stay. It's almost feudalism in some ways, but, it's a real problem for affordability in Vancouver. And I suspect that, in the Vancouver proper area, when you're dealing with a rundown family home at $2 million, it's a tough sell for families. That's why you're likely going to see more and more people, I think, flock to more and more affordable parts of Canada so they can still take advantage of things like universal health care and all that kind of stuff. But Vancouver's becoming increasingly difficult to live in.
Do you notice a difference from the east side to the west side? Because when I think of the west side of Vancouver, I'm thinking $4, $5, $6 million homes, every single one. Like there's nothing else available. So you have a certain amount of wealth that's going to purchase there. And then the old money that's just, bought that house 50 years ago for 150 grand or whatever it was. But now what I'm seeing on the east side is the east side to me feels a little bit more almost Toronto-y. And what I mean by that is you've got things like semis, or you've got things like 100-year-old houses that people have redone, and they're actually not just tearing them down and doing other stuff with them. So I'm starting to see, from what I've noticed, families moving into those areas, right? Because they can maybe actually get into, it might need to be a rental in the basement, but you might be able to actually get into something for a couple $1 million. And if you're a lawyer and you work for some, white collar job downtown, there's actually an opportunity there, right? Mm-hmm. So are you thinking that, is East Van now like really an opportunity for people to come back to Vancouver, or is it too far gone?
Yeah, East Van's become really desirable, and it started all originally, of course, as kind of like you alluded to, based on affordability, right? You're on the west side and it's $3 million. You go 8-minute drive to the east, which is very doable, and suddenly a similar-ish house, is down in the high ones type of price point. And when that sort of migration started to happen, there was, I guess, opportunity that was identified. And to be honest, a bunch of West Side builders started building on the East Side. Mm-hmm. So now the quality of home emulated that 8-minute drive to the West style of property. And yet you were still getting it for like a 7-figure discount, if you will. And because of that, a lot of people came here, and areas like Main Street that used to be a little bit more run down started to get a lot of attention. And of course, now it's got a bunch of like Michelin star level restaurants along it. It's called the Michelin Mile. And, when you have great food, you're going to attract some people as well. So yeah, it's still, there's a huge delta in price point between East and West. And it does allow you to get that Vancouver address and be in an area that's incredibly walkable, enjoyable. And yeah, you're right. It's all families and schools and dogs and that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, there's absolutely community here, and it's drawing, really, really great and diverse amount of people, and they each have their different dynamic. And to be honest, like a lot of Vancouver West right now, it's people are leaving the West to come to the East because there's more of a family dynamic. The West has become the west side of Vancouver, to be clear. I don't know. It's just, you go there on a Saturday and there's no kids playing hockey in the streets, to kind of give you a boots on the ground example, right? But you definitely will get that over on the east. It just feels a little bit more community to a lot of people. And so there's a big attraction to moving to the east. And we definitely see a big amount of volume in comparison.
I think for two things there. First of all, we've actually helped a lot of west side families on the west side, help their children move into property on the east side as well. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing this sort of transfer And it's largely because there's not a lot of people, like Dan said, where you have young families who can afford a $4 million house. So, they're going to the East Side where they can buy something for 1.8. And what we're now seeing, I know it sounds crazy, but
It's mind blowing. Like the parents are like, kids, I know you're really gonna have trouble getting into these $7 million homes over here. We're gonna put you into a $2.5 million brand new duplex over there. So you just we'll help you.
Yeah.
We'll help you get there. Like, it's so foreign to me.
Well, and when you actually, this is why I started off like all of my comments by saying, it's intergenerational wealth that's taken place here, because when you look at your average income to asset value ratio, you're talking about what, maybe $100,000 is $89 to $100,000 is probably the average household income, maybe 120 in Vancouver. And, when you've got an asset value of 2 million, you're looking at a huge, what is that, 20 to 1 asset value to income ratio? So when you go back 30, 40 years, it was 3 to 1, right? So that was a whole lot more palatable. People would pay off their house in 10 years. You can't do that anymore. And so that's also why we've largely seen the introduction of the Multiplex program in Vancouver, and it's been pretty successful. There's 700 applications in. I think there's 400 under construction. That's a big way to keep families in Vancouver by allowing them to stay in these neighborhoods, but not have to pay $4 million. They can get in at 1.8 and get a brand new property. Yes, it's not the same size, but you still get to stay in the city.
Buying a home is a big deal, so don't let your home inspection cause you more stress. For over 45 years, Karrasch and Dunlop has helped buyers across Canada understand the homes that they are buying with detailed, calm, clear, client-first inspections. Karrasch and Dunlop inspectors don't just point out problems, they explain what really matters in a way that will protect you in your home purchase. If you want confidence in your home inspection, top agents and home buyers trust Karrasch and Dunlop. So to check out where they service and to book your inspection, go to karrashanddunlop.com right now.
Yeah, and a bunch of these guys in Toronto are poo-pooing the multiplex thing right now, saying it's never going to happen. Like, they have not figured it out in Toronto yet. And now I've had some experience myself with seeing kind of how a project would go. And I am much more hopeful for the multiplex thing now than I was before, because I better understand it. And until...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we've got a number of them we're helping developers with ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you see the plan, though, like, you start to go, oh, okay, this is how it works. Everybody thinks 5-plex, 6-plex, whatever, and they think of like some weird, building with sectioned units and that sort of thing. That's not what they're building. They're building good, livable units.
Yeah.
And
so.
I think it is. I think it is the future here. I think it is what's going to be happening in a lot of these places.
I just got to say, when you talk about East Side, West Side, and you say 8-minute drive, the East Side, West Side of Toronto is an 1.5-hour drive in the middle of the day. Like, I honestly, one of my friends he lives East, started dating a girl in the West. I'm like, you're going to have to make a tough decision here, man. You're going to have to move West or this relationship ends, because it's so difficult. It's like, it's a whole nother city. So the fact you can get from East to West in 8 minutes is like so weird for me to hear, because Toronto's totally...
Yeah, right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, end to end, if you went to the far, the furthest west to the furthest east, sure, that can take 30 to 45, depending on the day and time of day. But again, the reason I was saying that 8 minutes is because that's when you can literally see a 7-figure difference in a similar home price, because you're literally just labeled east. Yeah, the same thing, like these multiplex or half duplexes, you're going to see as much as a 20% difference by having an east side address to a west side address.
Is that where all the development's happening? Is it all happening on the East End right now? Because I'd love to get into the multiplex stuff, because I know you guys are very involved in that. Where are they being built? I know you've said there's tons of applications. My understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is that you're building these first and then they will be sold off when they're complete. They're not kind of being pre-sold. So where's everything at? Is the enthusiasm still there like it was when it was first announced? Like, what does our audience need to know about what is actually, coming in 2, 3, 5 years in Vancouver with these types of properties?
Yeah, I'll start first, and I know Rand's got a lot to share as well. But so the legislation was adopted in Vancouver basically at the end of June of 24. And since then, yeah, there's been something like 579 applications, 116 permits have been issued, and there's about, I don't know, 1,400 units being built. So it's happening. And when you asked about sort of where, there's a great map that's available that shows where every single application and permit that's been issued exists. And it's almost evenly spread east to west, north to south. There's no real pockets that people aren't trying to build multiplex in. So the adoption, it has been universal, which is really quite, I guess, interesting. I thought there might be areas that people were like, no way, especially, in the more sort of affluent areas of Vancouver West, but it's literally like a blanket approval kind of map. So that's been interesting. There's typically, like when we run pro formas for our clients and work with developers, you need a larger lot, and typically there's obviously a higher lift on the west side because you can charge that premium on a per foot basis. But the need for these homes, again, is everywhere, right? So that's why we're seeing so many on the east side, and they can obviously get the land acquisition for a lot less and be able to still build at a profitable level on the east side as well. So there's a lot coming. And when it comes to the sales, yeah, it's a slow market, and it's even slower in the pre-sale world. People are trying, we're trying, we've got something up for sale. Our colleagues have stuff for sale, and there is a tiny level of absorption. But yes, I think for the absolute most part, the developers that can wait until completion to sell, for sure, they're going to have a higher chance. And they're all hoping for, of course, a better market or stronger market to get a higher sale point. So yeah, there is a minimal amount of sales happening now, but there's also just a minimal of people trying to pre-sale multiplex. So hopefully that answers that part of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me ask you guys this, Ryan. The goal, I would assume, is you build these things to sell them, and then you move on and you build the next one, and then you do it again and again, and that makes sense to me. What if you can't sell them? Is anyone going to have to hold on to these things and they become like, are they all becoming ownership opportunities, or do you think there's a chance that half these being built just turn into really nice rental options for people? Or are they all going to be sold?
I mean, there is likely the odd person who has owned that property for 40 years and is turning it into a rental through development. The vast majority of people look to de-risk and pull their money out of the assets. So I think what you're seeing more of is if it's a homeowner participating in it, they'll likely want to sell their property and build at least one of, say, the 4 units for themselves.
Right.
So they have a new property. They continue to live in the address that they lived in for a long time. And then, they sell off the other units that help pay for that unit, and then, bank the difference, right? And I think as the reason you're not going to see a whole ton of pre-selling of these units is because a lot of these developers are not the BOSAs of the world. They're not West Banks of the world that have, tons of kitty set aside to help market projects. They have, maybe $25,000, and that's all they've got, right? So, it's a very different model. And I think you're going to have some that really work well. People who have been historical duplex, triplex builders. I think in the multiplex space, they'll do really well. I think you're going to have people who are maybe coming from other parts of the development world that aren't working so well and trying to transition into this space. And I think that'll be a little bit more difficult because the way that we're getting stock to the marketplace is a lot different than how you would bring a tower to the marketplace, right? And how that would get acquired as well. So it's a very interesting plan, but Vancouver desperately needs a middle housing option. We just don't have that. People would often have to go from a 2-bedroom to a half duplex, where it's a $900,000 property to a $2 million property, and there's just nothing in between, right? So ideally, this begins to create that missing middle for families and allows a stepping stone again and to try and get that elusive detached home.
So the missing middle, I'm sure there's a main definition, and then there's what people think that definition should mean, right? And in your example, I get it. That's the middle price point between 2 asset classes that already exist. These are all, we're talking about Vancouver prices, so it's going to sound high anyways. But if this comes into different markets across Canada, those missing middle prices might be 500, 600,000, not. So give me an example of, you said the map of these is spread out on where these are being built. give me like a few different examples of neighborhoods on like what it would cost you right now to buy single family versus when these are done, because there's 1,400 that will be coming to the market at some point. What is that middle in these different zones of Vancouver? Like where at least are they trying to get for these units right now?
Yeah, sure. Definitely a couple examples. So I'll start with, I guess, my neighborhood, Mount Pleasant East, and a brand new, well, I'm going to share half duplex price because that's already what, is a number that's in the marketplace today. So a brand new half duplex, 1,600 square feet, 3-bed, 4-bath with garage, small yard. They're achieving $2 million today. Okay. And so Multiplex is going to be similar, right? Let's talk about similar size. You're going to lose the garage and you're going to lose probably some of that yard. But price point, yeah, they're going to be in the 1.9s kind of thing. And that's for brand new. So you go next door for the detached, where obviously you get yours, let's say typical 33 by 120-ish lot, right? And you, if you want a brand new house, let's go apples to apples that way, you're going to add upwards $750 to $1 million. Okay. It's $3 million for that new house for sure. Again, if you just want the detached fixer upper, of course, there's a whole range there. You know what I mean? The beat ups start at on the very, very low end. Let's call it 1.8, 1.9 for the lot, but you're basically dealing with a tear down. Go over to the west side, and that exact same condo, but the same builder, same specs, is 2.526. And so there you go, right? So you're already got a 25% lift right there. But the detached would be 4.5 if it was brand new right beside it. So again, yeah, these are fantasy land numbers. It sounds like, I can see the look on your faces. It's just like, but this is the cost here, and this is what's paying, and this is what we have clients purchasing today.
I found Vancouver's missing middle. It's in Surrey. It's here. It's here. We got a lot of affordable stuff. If you want to do the drive, which a lot of people don't want to do.
So,
but you get the idea, right? It's like a brand new home for a family for $2 million. Again, people are doing it typically with the bank of mom and dad gift to get into it, but it's a very livable home where you can raise a family and have your ground level entry and and have your neighbors that are $3.5 million homes, for example.
I mean, Vancouver, as we well know, has major geographical constraints, right? And there's really no more left or right or east or west to go. It's densification now. That's it. And so
Vancouver's done such a bad job of densification too, like downtown, sure, but the rest of the city over the years has done a terrible job.
Well, I mean, you have to look at the motivations behind that too, right? I mean, the people in power were the people who were now, rezoning these neighborhoods that they lived in to create more density for people, right?
They're the housing ministers of Canada now.
Well, that's what he oversaw the highest rise in prices ever to occur, right? And so, it's all, good and well to talk about this, but if we don't have a solution for the future homeowner, the first-time homebuyer, the youth of Canada, they're going to leave. And if there's no youth to buy the property, you can kiss your $3-4 million property prices goodbye. These people have to be able to buy these things. And that's part of the issue. Right. And so, when you look at like Dan said, a multiplex, when you're taking a $3.5 or $4 million piece of property on the west side and you're cutting it down and creating a $2 million option for somebody to buy, I mean, yes, it's still difficult and largely unaffordable, but that $1 million break is the difference between that person staying and leaving. Right. And that's the reality of living in Vancouver.
And that's Vancouver prices, but you put that example into other markets and those numbers start looking a lot more reasonable, right? I think that's maybe the key thing we should make clear to our audience. Like, this is happening in Vancouver, but if we then adopt this in other markets, Shauna would still be expensive too. But like, I don't know, like this is happening in Surrey too, Steve, on some level, like on that application map. Is anyone going to Surrey to do this?
I haven't heard anything about future multiplex stuff here. We have, I don't want to say we've got a lot of available land because we definitely don't, and it's very expensive, but a lot of Surrey and Langley is still large acreages that are being broken up. So I don't feel like we're going to have the same push necessarily, because you can get into, like, they're doing 100-unit townhouse complexes everywhere still. So you can get into that type of thing. You can buy off of a reputable builder. You can get into a strata that has, proper maintenance and everything done with it, right? So I don't think we're going to see the same push. I mean, I was looking at a house for myself the other day, affluent neighborhood in Surrey, nice place to be, $2.5 million price point, which is a high end in Surrey. And next door, they're marketing the property as maybe future multiplex because it's like a teardown.
Yeah.
Well, guess what that did though? Guess what that did for us? That took that property off of our list.
Because I keep trying to get Steve to buy a house. I'm like, you won't do it. What's stopping you? Buy that one. Make great content for the podcast if Steve moves.
It would make great content. And trust me, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. But if I move into one of the nicest areas in the city, and
So you're a NIMBY now.
Right.
You don't want them to build beside you. That's what you are.
Man, I am as NIMBY as they've ever come for everything. I'm the grouchy old man that reports all the illegal parking in my neighborhood, okay? Nobody wants this stuff necessarily in the backyard, but I will say it's different. And it's going to be different from Vancouver and Toronto than it is to Surrey. Because when you move into Vancouver, it's not like you're getting a 15,000 square foot lot. You're already used to a 10 by 10 backyard half the time, right? Like you're a pretty small little backyard. So it's not really that big of a deal if they do something. You're just happy to get outside space at all in Vancouver, and you live a different lifestyle. I think you also end up with, sorry, everybody that lives in Surrey, you end up with higher quality people in Vancouver. You know, if you're not on the downtown east side and living on the streets, generally the people that can afford those homes down there are of a higher income. So as a result, you're not necessarily going to get as much riffraff. So if you're thinking about putting these things in these areas and starting to build 3-story townhomes next to, estate style homes, I think that's why it won't get picked up. And I don't think you need to do it. Like, I think the likelihood of that lot being picked up by somebody who goes, I want to put a 4-plex in, in Ocean Park or in Morgan Creek, like, probably not going to happen.
Steve, to your
go ahead.
I think, when it comes to a place like Surrey, or when it comes to a place like Ocean Park, as an example, I think it's unlikely you'll see. We talk about this all the time with prospects who come on and want to do a multiplex, and they give us their address, and they say it's a good spot, and it's like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And
that applies to a lot of things in life.
Yeah, there's a market to this, right? And there's a famous statistician, I can't remember his name, but he said, all models are wrong and some are useful, right? And so while, the multiplex is a great idea, it's a great model, it's going to work, but it's going to work in highly densified areas. When you're looking at, like Steve said, a 12 or 15,000 square foot lot for a single family home, that's not the right spot for a multiplex. The right spot for a multiplex is on a slightly oversized lot in Vancouver. Somehow they ended up with an extra 15-foot easement down the side of their property, and now it's a 5,000 square foot lot instead of a 4,000 square foot lot. That's a prime spot for a multiplex. It's built for that idea. When you go out to Surrey, when you go out to Langley, when you go out to Chilliwack and things like this, these other housing forms like townhomes or duplexes or single family work just fine, right? And if you can't afford the 15,000 square foot lot, you can still buy a single family home. Just go buy one on a 7,000 square foot lot or a 6,000 square foot lot, right?
Do you know what's really interesting to me is this program arguably came out too late. Could you imagine if this had come out when the market was booming? So what's interesting for me to see is, like, we already know that condos aren't even launching because they can't sell out. We're getting purpose-built rentals being built because people are changing to that. And then in your market, obviously the multiplex stuff is going. But the fact that there is, I think you guys said something like 500 applications to do this thing in a market that we've already established has no investors, really. It's an end user market. Like, I mean, that would have been 2,500 applications in the heat of things if this regulation came in. It kind of like it missed the moment, or maybe it's a good thing that even in this moment in time when no one's taking risk on real estate because of the hangover we've just gone through, there's still 500 people willing to put in an application and 1,400 units we know that are coming. And maybe that should tell us that people believe in this, and then we will have to see, do they all sell? How do people enjoy living in it? Like, it's too early to know. But I think that maybe would how I'm looking at it from the outside, the fact people are interested in it in these market conditions should kind of tell you, hey, there's something here. Is that fair?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because for sure, if the zoning was in place during the 21 sort of blow off top, the over exuberance into buying these lots, there would have been bidding wars by developers to buy lots, which would have meant they were overpaying, which meant, or would mean as the market ticked down, those numbers or the projects wouldn't pencil anymore. Right. And they might actually shelve them, sell off the lot, whatever. So yeah, no, it's a great observation, Tom, that like, yes, if a developer is looking at one of the slowest markets in decades and saying, now is the time to build, because they believe in that end product, again, being for the end user, right? Not just for investors, not for speculators, for people and families who want to live in them, that yeah, there's going to be a market for it. And it's literally because it's been missing. So yeah, these are largely proven in the landscape in the sense that we see like the half duplex market being one of the strongest in Vancouver East and West. And this is very similar, let's be honest, right? A multiplex home is going to have a largely duplex feel.
Yeah.
So it's not 100% proven because there's things like open air parking for the most part. So there's a bit of changes, from being apples to apples, but they're similar and they're proven. And of course we see demand for it. And again, they look to be dense enough that developers actually have a chance of making a bit of a profit again.
I think one of the big things developers are looking at is interest rates. So maybe we'll quickly jump there just to have a quick discussion, because upcoming here, which regardless of all the other things we're tracking in the market, this is going to be the one that the general consumer gets fed in front of them the most, even though I think it's the least relevant right now, is what Bank of Canada does or doesn't do. And the Fed is announcing on the same day on September 17th. So I guess my question would be to everybody here, what do you think they're going to do? Number two, does it make a difference? So I don't know, Steve, you want to start?
It makes no difference.
Done.
What are they going to do?
I don't know.
Job numbers are not good.
They wanna hold. They're being forced to cut. So I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna put my money on another hold. Just Canadian Bank. I don't know what the Fed's gonna do. I have no idea what's happening down there.
I'll go next then. When you consider U.S. stock markets at all-time highs, you consider S&P, NASDAQ, all of that stuff. It's all all-time highs right now. And, somehow Donald Trump is screaming at Jerome Powell to, let's keep going. And it's sort of like, whoa, at what cost, right? And so I don't know necessarily where he's going to go. I think, though, I do think that interest rates in the U.S. are somewhat higher than they need to be. I think the U.S. can still drop rates and still stave off some inflation. We'll see. But I think Canada right now is in a really tough place economically. And I think they're so tied to tariffs, things like that. Largely, any income that is a result of interest rate cuts in the States, we'll see in Canada as well, because we can't afford not to. That's largely my take on it. Does it change things like affordability? Not a chance, right? Like, what are we going to cut? 0.25? Big deal. So, I mean, it might, that's great for manufacturing sectors. That's great for other parts of the economy, perhaps. But I think, I think the Bank of Canada is trying to hold rates higher than they trying to stay where they are, because I think they may need to recover and they may need to drop more. So I think they're trying to stave off as long as they can before they have to actually drop and stimulate. Because I don't think we're far away from that either.
Hey, podcast listener, if you're looking to buy or sell a property in Surrey or the Fraser Valley, you have to reach out to Steve Karrasch, my co-host. As much as we make fun of each other on this show, The truth is that I do this podcast with him because he is reliable. He has an opinion. He knows what he's doing. He has a ton of experience. And although I have never personally sold a home with Steve, if I were and I was in that area, he would be my number one choice. And let's be honest with each other. As much as he has a hard exterior on the show, he's a little bit of a softie once you get digging a little bit deeper. So you can reach out to Steve in the link in the description. I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Okay, so I don't know if we can date stamp this, but so much can happen from then, between now and then. And of course, Tom, you're absolutely right. A brutal jobs number that would really lean in towards a cut. And, at the end of the day, sure, maybe that 25 bips doesn't do much immediately or overnight for real estate sentiment, but we're starting to get back to a place, if they do cut once or twice more, where now, of course, companies can start borrowing again, maybe start growing their employee count, et cetera, right? And of course, the higher that goes, it will trickle into the economy, which means it'll trickle into housing, but it's slow. It's slow, right? You don't see those effects for 6 to 9 months kind of thing. So yeah, I guess I'm going to leave it as a 50-50, but again, by the time that jobs number comes out, if Canada goes negative again, I think a cut is a shoo-in, but 25 bit.
A 25 pointer for sure. One of the things that I've always been watching for a while here is what Bank of Canada is doing, and then how it's impacting the rental numbers for like rental prices across Canada. Because when interest rates were at their highest, so were rental prices. And there's a few different reasons why that could have happened. Maybe it pushed a lot of people back into rentals that could have afforded to buy before, which was creating more demand. Now we're on the opposite side of it, where we have all this rental supply and we have rental prices actually dropping. And these rentals.ca reports that come out, which are really good, for a while, the numbers were clear. Toronto, Vancouver down, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton up. For the first time in a long time, pretty much everything is red other than Saskatchewan. Everything else is red. Even Calgary's dropped. Edmonton year-over-year numbers are not going up anymore. So we're finally seeing this pressure on rental prices dropping. We've already talked about many times that investors are not really involved in today's market like they used to be. With rental prices dropping and sale price dropping, I'd love to get your guys' opinions on what's it going to take for an investor to show back up to buy the typical condo unit like they used to, when we're not seeing price increases and rent is going down.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in on that one. Couple things. Oh, sorry. Did you go, Ryan? Sorry, it's a bit quiet. You go.
My answer is going to be pretty simple. I'll just chime in, chime out. I think from an investment perspective, couple of things. Primarily, as an investor, you have to look at yield. If you're not getting yield, you don't have an investment, right? So that's number one. If your cash flow negative or your capital appreciation isn't taking place, you're not going to invest. And what's more is you're likely to divest out of that. And so I think when you consider, real estate has a lot of competition right now too. Look at the S&P, look at the NASDAQ. Yeah. There's other places to put your money where you're going to outperform. And so until people think that diversification back into real estate makes a lot of sense, or they've made a shitload of money and they're going to bring it out of the market and put it into real estate,
right?
That I kind of think makes sense, but that's not going to be the majority of people. And so I don't think you see a return to investment real estate in the sense that mom and dad are buying an investment condo for their kids, right? That marketplace, I think, has dried up and gone bye-bye for some time. I think where you're going to see investment in the real estate space is going to be in things like these multiplex deals, where you're going to have funds that are going to get built up. You're going to see 20 to 30% returns on these things. And I think that's where you're going to see the investor return. But I don't think you're going to see, the whole, you have to have money flowing off at such a cheap rate for a capital appreciation to make sense, comparatively speaking, to what else is available to investors.
Are you guys making any moves right now in your real estate portfolios? Are you getting out of things? Are you investing in things? I'd be curious. You don't have to give me like numbers and areas, but with everything going on, I'm always curious, the people that are in this, personally, do you see opportunities?
Yeah, we're seeing the people who are either selling off their condo portfolio. We literally had this conversation yesterday with a client. The money is moving into investing through Multiplex. So even if you're not developing your own property or buying one to develop, there are a number of platforms and funds where you can invest in and see the returns from the production and sale of Multiplex. And the thing is here too, I mean, sure, the projections are strong. We'll see how those materialize or not, in the near future. But the risk side, because the time frame is so short, is somewhat enticing, right? Because you can get in and out of a Multiplex project in like 18 months or less, kind of thing. So as an investor, your window of exposure is sort of mitigated, and people are interested in this because the numbers appear to pencil in today's market, with the downside risk, included. So that's kind of where we're seeing money. And yeah, sure, we've got some funds set aside for projects of our own and or to invest through some of these partners of ours who are building right now.
It's kind of like the private mortgage investing alternative now is the Multiplex based on the timelines and when you get your money back, right? Again, if you were involved in that other side of it.
Did you see the report, Tom, that came out that said housing starts are way, 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 way up? I don't know how they come out with this number, but apparently over the summer it was something like almost 300. I don't know if that's a comma or a no, it's 300, almost 300,000 new housing starts for, I think, the month of July. And I'm like, wait,
what are they building? What is that?
But that number doesn't make any sense to me because that's got to be an annualized number. Like at this point in the year, we're at 300. Like it can't be 300,000 new housing starts happened this month because that would actually hit
like they
Trudeau's like goal, right?
Or they've actually put a shovel in the ground.
But they attributed it to mostly purpose-built rentals being built.
I would assume the removal of the HST and those getting off the ground and not needing to pre-sell them, right?
And what Ryan's talking about is that individual investor is likely gone for longer because more people in the future, like it or lump it, will be renting off of REITs and purpose-built rentals and large corporations as opposed to mom and pop landlords. So I think that's going to be taken over by corporations. Like it's going to be companies that you're
financialization of housing is,
and the investment the investment opportunity for the individual will likely be less. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a terrible thing because I do, my purpose for being in real estate is I appreciate home ownership a lot myself, and I want to help other people get there. So I view it much more. I would much rather work personally with end users and homeowners than I would the investment side of things. I just prefer it more. I think people are buying for their needs rather than just these dollars or whatever. And I think maybe we'll get back to that a little bit more as prices come down and as more of these rentals just shift towards companies.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And there's
he is a little right. He's hang on. Ryan has tried to chime in a couple.
No one will notice because after this episode, we'll lift up Ryan's volume. But yeah, a few times he is trying to talk.
Ryan, I'm on your side of the screen here, so I'm fighting for you. We're gonna let Ryan respond to that real quick before Dan comes in.
No, you make a really good point with all the purpose-built rentals coming to play. The ability for mom and pop to compete against that too is difficult. And I think just to add to your point, when you start to introduce things, and we're on the precipice of this now, you look at the introduction of things like artificial intelligence and what that's going to do to the employment sector and what that's also going to do for things like investment, right? So, is it going to take more investment dollars out of the real estate industry and into the technology field? And as a result, is that going to free up sort of more inventory for home buyers, future home buyers who want to get in? Is that going to stabilize things? I like to think that with a new emerging industry and a new sort of way of investing, that you're going to see people leave what was a traditional investment space for end users to take advantage of that while they go and invest in what would be a new arena. So I do think that, there's going to be opportunity too, but I largely agree with you, Steve. I think when you factor in all of these purpose-built rentals and a lot of these developers who switch their projects over to purpose-built rentals so that they could survive, we now have a rental supply issue. right? Which that sure as shit happened quick. But
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the one thing that actually came out of nowhere this year that nobody was really thinking of is now we're going to have all of these new rentals come to the market and what that will do for rents, which I think is a good thing. Lower rents are a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
absolutely they are.
But then how that will affect the market. So now, Dan, I'm back on your side. You can respond now.
Yeah, just one more thought on that. So yeah, I mean, the purpose-built rental construction pipeline is something like 5 times what it's ever been. So yeah, building those and completing those into a marketplace where rents are currently declining. I mean, vacancies are, I think, about to skyrocket. And of course, rental rates are going to go way down. To your point, Steve, sure, it makes it far more accessible. But then to circle back to you, Tom, yeah, that's going to push the mom and pops and the condo investors away further, right? It's just going to push returns lower. And to, I guess, get back to your original question of what is it going to take to have that type of property be an attractive investment again? I mean, I think it's as basic as, you look to someone who does a fantastic job of tracking this, Ben Rabidou. He has a chart that shows essentially what the average Toronto condo, purchased and achieved the average rent with the average mortgage,
Sure.
and what is the current negative return, and what's the current negative return when you factor in the principal pay down. And right now that's negative. I think it's negative $150 a month or something to that effect. When that turns positive again, and it might take 4 or 5 years potentially, that is of course when that type of property, that asset, that type of investment will become attractive again. And because people, I think humans, myself included, sort of have short-term memories, when the market starts to lift again, there's going to maybe be that next generation, that next wave of investor who's like, hey, prices are going up. I can cash flow on a condo. This seems like a good thing to buy. So I think that's what it will take. Again, the time horizon is the unknown, but I don't think 4 or 5 years out at a minimum is completely out of the realm of viability.
I wanted to wrap up today with a quick list of the #1 jobs that are most at risk being taken over by AI. And spoiler alert, we're on there at the bottom. All right. The first one is data entry clerks. Now, one thing I found interesting in this report that came out was the word basic was used under the most examples, like basic tasks from these jobs. So data entry clerk, telemarketers, which kind of makes sense. You can have AI generated conversations.
Get rid of them altogether, I guess. We're just going to have more because they're going to be AI. Yeah.
It's going to get worse. They don't have to take bathroom breaks. They can just continue to dial. Customer service representatives, basic support, because AI chatbots can take that over. That's already kind of happening on websites. Retail cashiers, proofreaders, and copy editors, which also makes sense. Paralegals and legal assistants, bookkeepers, fast food restaurant workers on the front line. That you're already seeing that with the automated ordering type of things. Transportation and logistics with self-driving vehicles, manufacturing with AI-powered robots, interpreters and translators, historians, which makes me a little concerned that AI could just start making up history. I saw someone the other day say that I asked AI a question and it gave me a quote back from me. I'm like, it knows you're talking to it. It's trying to make you feel good. Like it's not just pulling that quote out. Like it knows it's talking to you. If you ask it a question, like I've done it before. I'm like, who are the top agents in downtown Toronto? And it gives me a list and I'm #1. I'm like, did you put that on there because you knew it was me? They're like, yes. Anyways, writers and authors, sales representatives is the final one on the list.
The biggest one? The biggest one, Tom, is drivers.
I brought that up.
The biggest, yeah, but that's going to be the biggest impact on the economy. I think it's something like 40% of men in the U.S. are employed through driving.
Wow.
Delivery, whatever, shipping, whatever. So that's going to likely be the biggest thing. I think the only saving grace there is maybe we can, until Optimus comes out, maybe men will have to run security on those automated shipping semi trucks over there, because probably going to end up getting hijacked when people realize there's nobody on board. So, but that's a new industry that could come. Shipping, receiving, hijacking, semi truck hijacking. Here, that's a new industry that's coming our way. Mad Max, here we come.
I've kept you guys way too long. I just wanted to. We'll just stew on that information, and we'll think about it, and we'll talk about it again another date. But Dan, Ryan, thank you so much for coming back on the show. For anyone that's listened to this that needs a Saturday podcast, you should absolutely go check out their channel after this. We will tag it in the description. Steve will tag it in the description if he remembers. And any final thoughts, guys, for the audience, or anything you want them to hear?
Yeah,
They're waiting. They're waiting to see who's going to respond first here this time.
Dan's like, okay, I've been told. I'll let Ryan respond first.
If I was going to sum up our entire chat and distill it, I would say patience is your friend in this marketplace. Don't wait forever, but at the same time, really work with, if you're interested in buying or disposing of real estate, you need to work with somebody who's been in the weeds, who understands more than just, how to market a home. This is a macro and micro economic environment that really needs consequential thinking. So I think, when we find ourselves in these marketplaces, really I know we talked about how AI was about to replace us, but I actually am a firm believer that AI won't necessarily replace sales. And I think that's because human beings want to interact with other human beings. I think the data will be owned by artificial intelligence, but the decisions will likely come down to the human being. And that is going to depend on the other human being that you're interacting with. So I think, being around high quality people who have a proven track record in this environment are good places to get advice from.
Love it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Final
No,
thought?
Tom, Steve, thank you guys so much. Your channel is awesome. I do watch every single episode every week, and you really do help inform your audience, which I think is the goal here. So, we really appreciate you having us on, and hopefully we share some tidbits that help your viewers make some educated decisions here, because
Absolutely. This was a great conversation. Thank you guys for doing it. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. I hope your September is off to a great start, and we will see you next week. Bye.